Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome to the Karey Carbaugh podcast, episode number 50. Buenas noches, damas y caballeros, chicos y chicas, niños de todas edades, y bienvenidos a el Karey Carbaugh podcast, episodio número 50. Welcome. My name is Karey Carbaugh, and this is the Karey Carbaugh podcast. I'm a few minutes late here. I was having some technical difficulties, and I'm kind of winging this a little bit. I didn't have the time to prepare this as much as I had hoped to, but here we are, and I'm glad you all are with me tonight. And this is a little bit later than normal. The last couple weeks I've been shifting this a little bit later because of a Christmas choir that I'm involved with at church. But I appreciate you bearing with me, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. If you could let me know which you're watching this. If you're watching it live, drop an L or the word live in the comments. If you're watching it on the replay, drop an R or the word replay in the comments. That's always helpful for me to know. And it's also helpful for me to know where you're dialing in from, if you could put that in the comments as well. I do appreciate you joining me. Once again, my name is Karey Carbaugh, and this is the Karey Carbaugh podcast. For those of you who don't know, I am a person with low vision, and these podcasts have been designed to encourage people's self-esteem, to give you some self-esteem boosters, hopefully, ways to feel good about yourself and feel positive about yourself. Especially during the holidays. I've been doing a few episodes lately, kind of leading up into Christmas and the other holidays which you may be celebrating if you're not a Christmas celebrator. I am a Christian, and so I make no bones about that. I don't push my faith on anybody else, but these podcasts definitely have a Christian flair to them. For those who are not believers, I appreciate you bearing with me on that. Tonight's message will have a bit of that flavor, but hopefully you can take the intention from this message, whether or not you're a believer. The title of tonight's podcast is Holiday Giving is Good for the Soul. I had to stop and think what I decided to title that. Holiday Giving is Good for the Soul. I can't believe this is episode number 50. If I had realized this was kind of a milestone episode, I might have done something a little bit more special for this, but I think this will be a good topic, especially as we lead into the holidays. It occurred to me this week that this is a great way to build up self-esteem. If you think back to your own childhood or upbringing, if you celebrated Christmas or the holidays, I'm guessing that giving was a big part of that. Giving gifts, receiving gifts, giving other, perhaps not monetary gifts, but offering services during the holidays, whatever that might have looked like for you. If you're like me and probably many of us here, as our families have gotten older and more diverse, more split up, we may not get together with families as much anymore, and we may not do the same kind of gift giving or gift exchange that we did before. And so I have found a way to fulfill that in myself, which I wanted to share with you, not to lift myself up in any way. I'm not saying, oh, look at me, look at all the good stuff I'm doing. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to perhaps spark some ideas in your own holiday traditions and help other people to find ways to give back and find ways to give to less fortunate people. Because as I've found, at least for myself, this really helps my self-esteem. Helps to boost my self-esteem, my positive outlook, positive feelings toward myself and towards others. What do I mean by that? Well, let me back up. Last year, Well, actually, let me back up a little bit further than that. I remember the last several years that we did gift exchanges and more of the traditional gift giving. This idea kind of got sparked in me by my sister-in-law, Terry. She used to say, rather than giving gifts to each other, what if we contributed to those who are less fortunate? And maybe instead of giving a gift, we give a donation to the Heifer Project, which gives cattle to underprivileged families so that they can raise that cow or cattle either for food or to sell. And there's other projects like that. That's one that comes to mind right off. So that kind of started me thinking in this way, in this line of reasoning. And as we've kind of gotten in the last couple years in particular to giving less to each other, because it seemed like we were just basically exchanging gift cards. I give you a gift card, you give me a gift card. We just sort of swap gift cards. So we've kind of moved away from that. We might give some small gift to each other within the family, but as that transition happened, I found for myself that that part of the holiday tradition was missing for me. And so last year I started, there's many projects that do this, but the church that I'm going to now had a project where they would give gifts. Basically, you pick the name of a child who's in foster care or kinship care, and they give you a reusable bag, cloth bag, with the child's name, the child's age, and what they want for Christmas. Basically, what their wish list is. And I picked this young man last year. He was 12 years old. And all that was on the card, he wanted MMA shorts. I didn't really have a clue. I kind of knew what they were, but I didn't have much knowledge about MMA shorts or what they were, how to go about picking such a thing. So I did a little bit of research and ended up finding a couple of different styles. And so the child wanted a pair of MMA shorts, and I decided to get him two. And hopefully they were what he wanted, but I'm trusting that they were, and that hopefully that made that young man's Christmas a bit more special last year. And along with that, I also did 3x5 note cards with scripture verses and words of encouragement that he could either tack up on his bulletin board, put on his wall in his room, put on his mirror where he can read them in the morning. Verses that would lift him up, Bible verses that would lift him up and give him encouragement, maybe when he's not feeling real positive about himself. So that was how I started this tradition last year. And this year, I ended up picking 2 bags, which led to 4 gifts. The church had 2 projects going this year. One was the foster care and kinship care, and the other was gifts for young people. Most of them are teenage or just barely preteen, in a group home here in town. And so I took 2 of the bags for the foster care, kinship care. One of them was a 7-year-old boy, and he wanted Legos and WWE figures. Once again, I knew Legos from when I was a child. I used to play with Legos a lot as a kid. I didn't realize how much Legos have changed over the years. When I did them, they were simple houses, and you'd get a bunch of Lego blocks and you'd create your own house or your own building. You might have a couple of wheels to put on it to make a car out of it, but they were nothing like the Legos today. And so I found a couple of Lego sets that I'm hoping will resonate with this young boy. And I found a couple of WWE figures. Once again, that was something I didn't have much knowledge about, so I had to do a little bit of research online. And hopefully, those things will bring some joy to him this Christmas season. And then the other one that I picked was a young man who's 12 and is really into magnets. And one of the things that was listed was a magnetic tile set. I didn't know there was such a thing. And it also listed magnetic numbers and letters, and I thought, a 12-year-old numbers and letters? That seems a little bit juvenile, but okay. So I did some research again and found a set of numbers and letters that had arithmetic symbols in them too, and I thought, well, that'd be a good educational thing for this young man. And I found these magnetic tiles, and it turns out one of the young men that I picked from the group home, who was also 12 or 13, I'm trying to remember now, I think he was 13, also had a specific magnetic tile set that he wanted. And so I picked that up for him and picked the one up for the other boy, along with some magnetic numbers and letters and a magnetic dry erase board, a little 8.5 by 11 dry erase board that he could put the numbers and letters on. And again, with all of these, I did the 3x5 note cards, and had some scripture references and some uplifting verses and sayings for these kids. And it hit me that, particularly with this one boy, and I ended up using it for 2 of the 4, since he was so much into magnets, I found these little magnetic picture frames that he could slide the cards in and out of and change them out and put them up on a magnetic surface where he could read the uplifting scripture verses and sayings. And so that was kind of how that evolved this year. And then the 4th child, it was interesting, the 2 for the group home, they had little cards, like almost the size of a business card, that had the child's name, age, and they had written down either one want or need. And some of them were things like soap or underwear or deodorant. Those were some of the needs. And then the wants, one of them was this magnetic set that I got for the young man. The one that I picked, I decided I would do one want and one need. And the one that I picked for a need was a 15-year-old that wanted a black beanie cap, stocking cap, beanie cap. And so once again, those are pretty inexpensive. He wanted one. I found a set of 2 that was pretty inexpensive, that are lighter weight, more for everyday use. And then I found a heavier one that would be good for the colder weather. And so I picked those up for him. And I thought, these little things for these kids, whether it be a Lego set or a magnetic tile set. Like I say, I didn't know anything about magnetic tile sets. They're almost like what I used to have as Legos as a kid, where you can build houses or build buildings. The one that I got was a castle, and but you can mix them up and match them up and design your own things with it. And I thought, these kids that are in foster care or in a group home, the things that they want and the things that they need are so simple. And many of us take for granted the things that we have available to us. That's sort of, as I started thinking about that, that's what led to this idea for this podcast tonight. Once again, not to brag on myself or put myself on any kind of a pedestal. I didn't do any of these for the praise or the glory at all, but rather just for an opportunity to spread some light and to hopefully give some Christmas joy to these kids who may not have much other joy the rest of the year. Living in a foster home, living in a group home where they don't have family around them. They may have friends that are peers or foster parents, staff members who hopefully care for them the best that they can, but it wouldn't be the same as being in a family. And so that's how I've chosen to spread the Christmas cheer this year. And for me anyway, that is a boost to my self-esteem. So I hope you're finding value in this. If you are, drop the word value or a V in the comments and let me know that. Hopefully this is bringing some value to someone out there. Another idea, this is not something that I've done, but I've heard of people doing it, and I can imagine that this would also sort of give you the same adrenaline rush and self-esteem boost. And that's this idea of paying it forward. I think you can do this any time of year, but especially during the holidays. I've heard of people, they'll go into a coffee shop and they'll buy their own, or maybe a drive-through McDonald's or something. They'll buy their own and then they'll pay for the person in line behind them. And in that way, kind of encouraging this pay it forward. And then the idea is that that person maybe buys for the person behind them, and they buy for the one behind them, and so forth and so on. And so rather than thinking about your own needs, thinking about the needs of those behind you. And I've heard some stories of people who've been on the receiving end of that, and sometimes people can't afford to pay for the car behind them. But I've heard some stories of people who are very much in need and were trying to scrape up enough to get that meal at McDonald's or whatever, and they pull up to the window and the person in front of them has paid it forward, and that's enabled them to have a meal that they might not have been able to afford otherwise. And so I think especially during these holidays, we can all look around ourselves and find someone, no matter how, sorry, I've got an itch in my nose right now, no matter how difficult of a situation we're in, we can always look around and find somebody who's worse off. Somebody that we can lift up. And maybe you can't afford to do it financially. Maybe you're struggling financially and can't afford to buy gifts for someone else, that, especially someone you don't know, that you may never meet. Maybe you can't afford to pay it forward in a drive-through or in a coffee shop. There's other ways you can give back or pay it forward. Maybe it's doing a chore for someone. Maybe it's helping a neighbor shovel walks. Many times I've been on the receiving end of that, and I've gone out to shovel my sidewalks after snow. I know some of you who are watching this are probably like, shoveling walks? You've maybe never seen snow. But we had our first, not major, but our first significant snowfall today. And I'm going to have to get out and shovel walks. I decided to wait till tomorrow because it's going to be so cold tonight. I didn't want it to ice over. But many times I've come outside to shovel walks, and there's either been a path shoveled or the walk in front of my house across the sidewalk that's required to be shoveled. Somebody shoveled a path along that so that I didn't have to shovel as much, or in some cases at all. They may not have shoveled my whole driveway, but since I don't drive, I don't always shovel the whole driveway. So having been on the receiving end of that, that's always a very positive blessing to receive something like that from a neighbor. I don't even always know who it is that's done it. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I can guess. Sometimes I'll look out and see them finishing up. But regardless, that's another way that if you can't afford to give something monetarily, maybe you do something for somebody else. You shovel walks, you mow a lawn, you help pull weeds, you help clean gutters, whatever that might look like for you. There's other ways that you can give back, especially during the holidays, that don't require a lot of financial commitment. And so with that, that's sort of my final thought for this topic tonight. Once again, I hope you've gotten value from this. I can't tell for sure. It doesn't look like there's very many comments. Hopefully some people are catching this live. If you're catching it live, drop me the word live or an L in the comments. If you're catching it on the replay, drop an R or replay in the comments. And if you've gotten value from anything in this topic tonight, drop a V or the word value in the comments. I have had a couple people that have reached out with suggestions on future topics to cover. If you have ideas on things you'd like to see me cover in these podcasts, I would love to hear from you regarding that as well in the comments. And if you'd like to be added to my email list, drop the word email in the comments. I'm starting an email list so that I can do some more private targeted events for people that are not this general podcast type format. And I'd love to add you to that list if you'd like to be added. So drop the word email and I'll reach out and get your email address privately from you. Or you can message me on Facebook or Instagram and send me your email address, and I'll be happy to add you to that list. So with that, I believe that brings us to a close on this topic. I hope you've gotten value, and I really appreciate all your support through these last 50 episodes. Once again, I can't believe we're on number 50 already. We'll be hitting the 1-year mark here in a couple weeks because I started these on Christmas Eve last year. Actually, Christmas Day last year, because Christmas Day was on a Wednesday. So I started these on Christmas Day night or Christmas night. And so we'll be coming up on our 1-year anniversary here pretty soon. And I sincerely appreciate all the support that you all have given me through this first year of doing these. So with that, I will bid you a fond farewell and a fond good evening or good day, depending on when you're watching this. And make it a great week. Bless someone and make it a great day for them. Be a blessing to those around you. That fits in especially with tonight's topic. But be a blessing and have a blessed week. And I will see you on the Karey Carbaugh podcast next Wednesday, unless I pop up sometime in the meantime. Have a great week and have a great evening. Goodbye for now.